Is it possible to be Catholic and not resort to the appeal to authority fallacy, flawed philosophy, or low vibration and negative energy in order to defend your faith? The short answer is no. For one, the Bible and the church fathers, anytime you point to them being divinely inspired by God or the book written by men being inspired by God, you're now pointing to that book and those church fathers as the authority, just based on that. Not to mention the translation, the interpretations over the thousands of years and the thousands of different denominations. We're told that as a Catholic, the church history goes back to Jesus. He was the founder, so we must accept what they tell us to believe. Well, that's the appeal to authority fallacy. And for those of you that have kids, like myself, there's no point in time when I would ever give them the advice of operating from that premise. It's not something they should do. They should not trust human beings. They should verify truth. And to suggest that human beings thousands of years ago shouldn't be questioned, or the written word shouldn't be questioned, is to go against the very philosophy that I would teach my kids. And so that brings me to the next issue, which is flawed philosophy. So first we had the appeal to authority fallacy. Now we have flawed philosophy. Another example of flawed philosophy would be the idea as a Catholic that when you do something wrong, you should go and confess that to the priest so that God will forgive you. For one, you should be recognizing when you make mistakes immediately. You should be integrating that immediately. You should be reflecting on it for sure by the end of that day, and you should be making whatever changes you need to or working on it mentally so that next time you're in that situation, you don't make that same mistake. That is what I call a present state of awareness. And so I like to be present and aware as much as possible. And yet, if you're worried about going back to confession, it's easy to fall into the vicious cycle of, oh, I did something wrong, let me make note of it. Okay, I did something wrong, make note of it. And then a month later, you go to confession, and you do that out of fear that if you don't, you're not going to be in his good graces, and if you were to get hit by a bus, then, well, that's it. Too bad for you. You go to the netherworlds of hell and suffer for all of eternity. And so the only reason we adopt that flawed philosophy is out of fear. And so again, that's another flawed philosophy. Should I be operating out of fear? A lot of people will tell you if we didn't fear God, if we didn't fear eternal hell, if we didn't fear the wrath of God, then we would just all devolve into this hedonistic cesspool of depravity. But the truth is, it's the other way around. If you operate in fear, then you're not going to be the best version of yourself. If you operate from a positive, secure, comfortable in your relationship with the divine, and this sense of knowing that you are one with creation, and you would never be abandoned by an all-loving, omnipotent God, then you can approach this life as a journey, as an opportunity, uniquely in this vessel for this short amount of time, to make the most of it. That's a positive way of approaching this life. And we all know the saying, attitude is everything. So if you're positive, it's going to lead to positive behaviors, positive actions. You're going to treat people more positively. And so that, again, is the second issue, is that flawed philosophy of how you should see yourself in this realm and your relationship with all that is. And that also gets into the third issue, the low vibration and frequency that is fear. And we know this thanks to guys like Dr. Joe Dispenza and many others that are pioneering the scientific endeavor to understand the human anatomy in terms of our electromagnetic field and how our thoughts have a vibration and a frequency associated with them. And so if our worldview is built on low vibration and frequency, then we're already starting off on a bad foot. In fact, Joe Dispenza has a quote that I love. It says, if we knew the power of our thoughts, we would never let a negative thought infect our minds ever again. And in today's world, we're finally realizing this. Relationships, we're starting to realize that there's something deeper energetically between us and the people we interact with. And when it is negative, we can try to make it positive, but if it stems from a negative position or belief or perception, then it's going to negatively impact our relationships. It's going to negatively impact our performance. It's going to prevent us from becoming the best version of ourselves. And just to make matters worse, a lot of religious people will tell you, "Oh, well, it's not about what you do in life. It's about whether or not you accept Jesus as your Savior or not." And that's not Catholic, but it's a Christian for many denominations. And it's just another example of a flawed philosophy. The best philosophy to have is to recognize that you are special and you are loved by God, by all that is. And you're a part of everything. And given this opportunity, this life, you're called to be responsible. And your decisions matter. Your decisions send ripples out into the world. And they impact others. And if you just believe in the law of cause and effect, one of the Hermetic principles, then it's not crazy to think that when we cross over, when we pass away, we're going to have to relive all of this. And we have actual evidence for that being the case. We have what are called near-death experiences, where people get in a tragic car accident, have a heart attack, what have you, end up in the hospital, get resuscitated. They come back talking about this experience they had in the afterlife, in another realm, where they saw a bright white light. Sometimes they see Jesus Christ himself. Sometimes they have all sorts of different experiences, but a lot of times, oftentimes, they have a life review. And they say that they have to live through their entire life and relive every single thing that they ever did, particularly how they interacted with others. And they have to feel how they made other people feel. And oftentimes they say that they had this overwhelming sense that they weren't being judged, or that there were these beings that told them, "We're not here to judge." And yet they took it very seriously because they had to relive it in light of the truth as it relates to their actions while they were here. They had to see the ripple effect of their actions, and they had to feel the pain that they caused others. On top of that, they got to feel the positive, the good, for something as simple as just waving at someone walking down the street. And those are thousands, millions of near-death experiences that talk about this. So we live in a day and age where, thanks to technology, we have access to these near-death experience stories instantly online. And you can watch the documentary-style videos, and you can see in the people's eyes that they're being genuine. And you can see that this was a real experience for them. And you can see the commonalities between the various testimonies that you see. And so it's very real. Many books have been written. And so, having said that, it actually is more in line with what makes sense. And what makes sense is that there's not this eternal damnation if you do enough wrong that you're just gonna end up lost and abandoned by love, the source, creator, God. Because that's not love. That, love is about forgiveness. And if God is the epitome of love, then he's going to forgive you. And no human being would ever choose to separate itself from love. Love is a force that can't be overcome. And these people in these near-death experiences talk about it. They talk about how they were just enveloped with this love when they crossed over, and it was unlike anything they can imagine or that they could even describe. And so I think it's time that we start to have this discussion as it relates to religion and that endless debate on what the true faith is and who's going to hell, who's going to heaven. We might have gotten that wrong, even though the Catholic Church will tell you they are infallible and they don't get anything wrong, which goes against human nature in and of itself. I think now there's enough evidence where we can start having this discussion, and if it makes more sense with the evidence that we have from the near-death experiences, if the true nature of reality makes more sense the way they depict it, and it's more positive, and it's not as divisive, and the philosophy of it, of not being built on fear and low vibration, if that is the case, then just maybe that's how we should approach this life. And when you think about it, again, it's going to produce the best version of yourself if you're approaching this life from a positive point of view. And so I know that was a lot. I kind of went into the nature of reality there towards the end, but just to circle back around, there are 3 fundamental flaws with religion and the foundation of it. And that is the appeal to authority fallacy, the flawed philosophy, which I didn't mention but 1 or 2 examples of that, but there are many. And then the energetic nature of living in fear, with a fear of separation for all of eternity. That is powerful. That's the worst thing you could possibly imagine. And yet that's what the religion is built on. And not to mention the Bible itself, and I'll end with this. It says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." How's that even possible? If you're a parent and you're Catholic, you raise your kids Catholic, and they have this spiritual journey of their own, and they find themselves making sense of a different religion more so than Catholicism. Those parents now live in fear. They genuinely live in fear for their soul, for the soul of their kids. So they're tormented throughout their life. And that's what is really at the heart of, it's the source of the division and the never-ending religious debate, and why it's such a big deal to so many people. And so, anyway, thank you. Look forward to seeing y'all again. Y'all take care.